Alright guys, welcome to today's video. I hope you're all doing well. We're talking about camera gear again today. So honestly, these past few months have just been absolutely nuts when it comes to camera releases, rumored leak specs, and anything filmmaking or photography related. It's been crazy. I'm kind of sick of it, almost, but I am excited to talk about this new Panasonic S5 camera that has been released. Now, before we dive into what this camera can do and who I think that it's for, I just want to start with, well, I'm not going to be going deep into specs in this video. I think that's kind of a waste. You can literally just Google up Panasonic S5 specs, read the sheet, and then if that's all you wanted, you're good to go. We're going to be talking about Panasonic as a brand, as a company, what their mirrorless cameras have kind of been portraying to us, the customers, and how it lines up in the mirrorless camera market today against some of their other competitors. So starting with the GH5, that camera was released whiles ago and still regarded as a fantastic camera, very capable, fantastic image quality, and up until like 2019, it really was a unique camera in the sense of it could do some professional things for an affordable price and also in a physically small package that other cameras just couldn't do. And you were sacrificing a few things like the convenience of having fantastic autofocus, having a large sensor to get excellent low light performance and also really pleasant out of focus elements. But what you were sacrificing for in convenience, you were making up for in just sheer image quality and color grading flexibility. And a while back, I was watching a podcast, I guess I was listening to a podcast, by Tyler Stallman and Geraldine Dunn. They were talking about camera specs, what things cameras nowadays just need to have. And this was before the EOS R5 and R6 and the A7S III were put on the market, and before people were shooting with those. So they said a lot of things, but among them, 10-bit 422 internal had to be a thing from now on out. And also along with that, usable, reliable autofocus that was fast and smooth. And the GH5 really revolutionized mirrorless cameras by having one of those big features, which was the 10-bit 422 internal, even all-eye recording. And that really wasn't a thing, and still wasn't a thing up until 2020. Fuji is capable of doing 10-bit 420 internal as of now. Now let's actually talk about the S5. I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a weird tangent there. That was just to say that Panasonic really built their cameras around professionals and what people needed in a professional setting. Good manual focus and exposure aids because of that lack of autofocus and auto stuff in Panasonic cameras, and really just marketing them towards professional shooters like the S1H is oriented towards. Fantastic camera, even Netflix approved. And so with the S5, Panasonic is effectively blending features from the S1H and also the GH5 and kind of bringing them into one camera. Not rendering either cameras useless, because there are still strong reasons to pick up either the GH5 or the S1H, depending on what your needs are and what your price point is. The S5 sits in the middle between them as a very capable camera, powerful, but I just think it was released at the wrong time. Let me explain myself. Canon and Sony, two heavy hitters, even Nikon with the Z8 on the horizon, they're just doing some incredible things for the professional shooters, hybrid shooters, where video is a need and a must. Things like 422 10-bit internal with fantastic dynamic range has never been seen for Canon, Nikon, or Sony on their mirrorless camera lineups, and now we're seeing that as a standard. It's crazy. And in my opinion, that was Panasonic's biggest differentiating point between them and other brands, quite frankly. The ability to have more professional codecs and color subsampling modes, that's now an advantage that Panasonic effectively lost. And with the S5, they're still giving that up because the A7S III can output 16-bit RAW as opposed to, through firmware, what the S5 will be able to do with 12-bit RAW to an external recorder. But also when you're in 4K 60 on the Panasonic S5, you're gonna lose some color info, dropping it down to 420. The S5, in my opinion, has a lot of weird and just unsightly limitations, in my opinion. Apparently, the preamps are worse than the S1H. I haven't shot on the S5. I haven't had it in my hands at all. And I'm not planning on it unless a lot of these issues are changed. I don't think they will be because it's a $2,000 camera that has a lot of professional features. And when you compare it to the A7 III, the EOS R, Z6, it is just better. And I would pick up the S5 over any of those cameras any day. But I pre-ordered the A7S III, and I'm excited to do a review on that. So I'm not planning, and I don't need the S5. I just keep coming back to the fact that this camera is very interesting. It can do a lot of things, but it can't do them very well. It has slow motion. That's where it kind of stops. It goes all the way up to 1080 at 180 frames per second, 4K at 60 frames per second, but you are limited to an APS-C crop, and also in a worse color subsampling mode. And with 1080p, all of the slow-mo looks really bad. But the 1080p looks pretty good from what I've seen, and also the autofocus performs well in 1080p, not slow motion. And that's another point, is autofocus. It's better than any other Lumix camera when you're shooting in 1080p or cropped / APS-C 4K. When you're in full frame 4K, boom, it's out the window. You should just be manual focusing because it's not usable. And that's disappointing because Lumix was very proud of the autofocusing improvements they've made, but I think they just need to scrap it and find something that actually works, because otherwise they're going to be losing a lot of customers to Sony, to Canon, and even, I guess, Nikon. This camera is going to have a dual native ISO just like the S1H of 640 when you're shooting in log, and also 4000. And yeah, it sounds really cool, but the low light performance in this camera isn't that fantastic. Shortly after ISO 4000, the noise and the color degradation in the image really starts to ramp up pretty quickly, especially in comparison to the A7S III. So if you're looking for low light and good features, just get the A7S III. There are much better cameras out there. I know I'm complaining about a lot of things in this camera. I don't think it's a bad camera, don't get me wrong. I think it's powerful and capable, especially for those who shoot like interviews where manual focus is all that they really need and where it's convenient for them. I don't think it's a realistic tool for people who are handhold running gunning, because one, the IBIS is worse than the S1H and the GH5 from some tests, and also you're going to have to manual focus on a gimbal, which is kind of difficult and impractical to do for solo run and gun shooters. So if you're a real estate shooter or a wedding videographer, this isn't really the best option for you. It does make sense that Panasonic would release a camera of this price point with specs and capabilities like this, because they do have their S1H, their S1, and the S1R, very capable cameras and professionally built and oriented cameras. However, I just think the timing of it is kind of poor. We have been desensitized, and we're still kind of in shock from Sony and Canon, what they've done with the R5, R6, A7S III. Those incredible specs, powerful, some limited by overheating, some not. And even the red Komodo. And to throw in the S5 in the middle of things, in the mix at the tail end, it's underwhelming. It's nothing to get super excited about unless you're on a budget of $2,000. I think this is probably the best camera that you can get for $2,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong. But if you're a hybrid shooter looking for a very photo-capable camera, holy cow, this camera is nuts in photography from what I've heard. Anything 2019 or older probably doesn't have the specs that this thing does. This is really a performer. And I think in photography it is better than the A7S III, so it does have that advantage. Yeah, I don't want to drone on too much about it. I don't want to complain. I don't want to praise it because I don't think it's that special. The biggest thing about the S5 is that it's going to be affordable. However, when you take a look at the L-mount Alliance lenses, the native ones are very expensive. A 24-70 is $2,000. However, if you go the Sigma route, your 24-70 is going to be half that price. But if you're not a fan of Sigma art lenses, which they're optically pretty good, pretty well built, but their image stabilization in lens is pretty limited. It's not available in most of their art lenses. So that is one of the downsides. And if you're not a fan of Sigma glass, you don't really have many other options. Their lens ecosystem is much more limited compared to the Canon EF and the Sony E-mount. And within the EF and E-mount, there are just much more affordable, but high quality still, lenses that you can get, which will give you better bang for your buck. And I just think that at this point, Panasonic, I'm never going to be going back to them again. I did start out with a G7 for my career in videography. I kept it for 2 years. I loved it. I used an Olympus lens on it. But I don't think I'll be going to Panasonic ever again, as long as they continue to do what they're doing with AF systems and also their lens lineup. It's just not, there's not a very compelling reason for me to do so. Let me know what you guys think about this camera that's coming out. If you're gonna get one, I'm curious to know why. Maybe do you have lenses for the L mount and you want kind of a more content creator oriented / photography camera to have in your back pocket? Or are you just gonna avoid this one completely? I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are on it and what you're planning on doing. There are so many cameras out, like out of the 99 cameras that have been released in the past 2 months. What are you guys thinking? Where are you going with it? If you enjoyed this video, drop it a like. It does help me out so much. Tells YouTube that this video is kind of okay. We're gonna get better lighting for the next video. I think the sound is getting better. This room is pretty non-reverby. Yeah, that's going nowhere. That clap just died. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notifications so you can see my videos every Monday. And we will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.